Hi everybody, welcome back. It's Matt. We're here with Andy from Man Gang, and we're talking about mental health and well-being, and the stigma attached. So not going to talk too much about it. I'm going to hand over to Andy and tell you what he does. So Andy, go for it.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me on, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here, talking about one of my most passionate subjects, and that's obviously men's mental health. Yeah, it's something I will talk to anybody about, and I'll often share some quite deep experiences with the aim of getting guys to maybe recognise what I went through, maybe recognise that in themselves, and hopefully get the help that they potentially might need.
What's the reaction to sharing some of the deeper, darker sides of mental health?
So I'll give you a little bit of my history to start off with. So I'm ex-military. I spent 22 years in the Royal Engineers. I'm Welsh, so don't hold that against me. So I grew up playing rugby. I grew up in a steelworking town in the valleys of South Wales in the 80s. So I had quite an austere upbringing, I would say. Yeah. And all of my male role models were pretty tough. So I never saw my dad cry, ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite common across most men. We don't see our male role models express any other emotions other than happiness, maybe a bit of anger, and very, very few in between.
Yeah.
Because it's not just manly. It's just not manly, is it? So I got diagnosed while I was still serving in the army. I was at the top of my game. I was good. I was a good soldier. I was good at my job. I was in an instructor post. So I was training other soldiers to be better in their trade. So as combat engineers. So lots of proper boys' own stuff, explosive related stuff, minefields, building bridges, tanks, things like that. Loads of real good manly kind of stuff. So this one day, I hadn't been feeling myself for quite some time, and I had a bit of an altercation. Something happened. A plan changed. I reacted quite badly to it. Went home. Just literally walked off camp. Went back to my house, and I was knee-jerk reaction. I had a pile of pills in front of me, and I was ready to say goodbye. For whatever reason, my boss came round to find me. He brought one of his colleagues with him, and I found out later that this chap had been on a course to learn to become a locksmith, and he came round with a little suitcase. So they kind of had an idea, but it had never been spoken about to me. So this guy came round just in case I wasn't responsive, so they could let themselves in. So they knew that something wasn't right with me. And I got dragged off to see the doctor. So the doctor said...
Sorry, so they knew something was up, but you weren't aware of it? You hadn't...
I'd never said anything to them,
yeah.
But they could obviously tell that something wasn't quite right with me.
That's interesting.
But they never spoke to me about it.
Yeah.
It almost had to get to that crisis point before it was spoken about, which, as we know, once you're at crisis point, it can be too late quite a lot of the time. And there's no need to get there. Absolutely no need to get there. So they came in, they dragged me across to see the doctor. The doctor looked at me and he said, "You're depressed." And I said, "No, I'm not. I was standing in my uniform still. I had tapes on my arm, position of responsibility, less of a beard then, but still like no hair. And to all intents and purposes, to all external appearances, I was a tough man." I said, I can't be depressed. People like me don't get depressed. But he said, "Look, you're depressed. So take 2 of these, give me the duty antidepressants, 2 weeks worth of sick leave, and then back to work." And that was that. So I took the 2 weeks worth of sick leave, didn't bother with the antidepressants. I didn't need them. I hadn't needed them up to then. That I just needed a bit of a break from work. Then I convinced myself that if I took the antidepressants, then I wouldn't be able to play with the explosives. I wouldn't be able to bear a rifle. I wouldn't be able to do anything like that. So that would take away part of my identity. It would take away the mask that I was putting on every day. I couldn't have that happen. So what I did was just press the pause button, gave it a good stiff ignoring for a couple of weeks, and just went back into work 2 weeks later and just carried on carried on normal jogging. Got promoted, got posted, threw myself into work, and then had another breakdown a couple of years later. Very, very similar kind of thing. This time it was a lot worse.
Yeah.
This time I got admitted to a psychiatric hospital. I spent eight weeks in a psychiatric hospital. Still hadn't learned the lesson. Spent the 8 weeks there. I nodded when they wanted me to nod. I laughed when they wanted me to laugh. And all I could think about was getting out of that place, because I couldn't accept that somebody like me, with everything I'd done in my life and what I kind of portrayed to everybody, I couldn't accept that somebody like me had mental illness. So yeah, went back to work and carried on again. I started getting in trouble. I started just like, yeah, whatever. What are they going to do to me? I started drinking. So heavily. It was easier, rather than face any of the issues that caused me problems. It was easier to look for the answers in the bottom of a glass or a bottle. I would convince myself that I didn't have a problem though, because I would only binge drink on a weekend. I would go out, but it would be all weekend. I would go out on a Friday and I'd come back in on Sunday. Yeah, and then struggle for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So yeah, still didn't talk about it. It was when I got back to work after all that, it was the mega elephant in the room. Massive elephant in the room. Everybody knew where I'd been. Everybody knew what was wrong with me. And it was the conversations. I'd go back into work and see people I hadn't seen for a while. And, oh, how are you? How are you doing, Andy? I haven't seen you for a while. Yeah. I'm doing fine. They know full well where I've been, but they wouldn't ask the question. Yeah. And do you think I'd tell them? Not a sniff. So that was my life up until I came out of the army. Now, when I left the army in 2012. I spent the last 2 years of my career. Preparing for the next challenge, this big challenge that they call civilian life. And the army are really good at getting you ready for it. What they do for like 2 years leading up to getting out of the army is they tell you how good you're going to be, what an asset you're going to be to Civvy Street. And I believed it, and I lived it, because I wanted to get into the events industry. See, that was my dream. I thought I'll get into the events industry. That's going to be my forte. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life when I leave the army. Biggest event going on in the UK in 2012. Probably the world's biggest event. I thought, why not? So I started applying for jobs with the Olympics. My first ever job interview, and I smashed it. I aced that interview. Went to the top floor of the Barclays Tower in Canary Wharf in London. And I'll never forget the day when they offered me 3 positions. We were stood in this big boardroom, and they said, "You can be. We've got a position for you at the water sports, the aquatics centre down at Weymouth." And I was like, "Yeah." They said, "We've got the rowing lake at Eton Dorney, or we've got the Olympic Stadium." And I looked out of the window over the Olympic Stadium, the Olympic Park there. I just said, "Yeah, I'll have that one." And it was just like a dream come true. Yeah. And I literally walked out of there. I was on cloud 9. I was buzzing. I was like, "Yeah, if this is what Civvy Street is going to be like, then I've got this sewn up." So life's good. I'm out of the army now, or come right to the end of my time. Life's going really well. Everybody's happy. Everything's nice and rosy. And one day, I was standing outside our coffee shop, and it's the coffee shop that my missus owns, and it's the coffee shop where we started our first Mangang meeting last year. So I was stood outside there, just happy and content with life, and I was watching the world go by. My phone rang, so I looked at it, and I looked back, and I looked back at my phone. Who's this then? And it was a London number, so I answered the call. Oh, hello, is that Mr. Bishop? This is whatever my name is from the London Organising Committee of the Olympic Games. Oh, brilliant, thank you. I was waiting for your phone call. I was waiting for you to let me know when I needed to turn up and what have you. And she said, oh yeah, it's about your forthcoming job role. We've withdrawn our offer of employment. I was like, what? And it was like somebody had just started laying into me. Literally, the rug got pulled out from under my feet. The cloud that I was on all of a sudden disappeared, and I just came back down to earth with a bump. I was like, right, this shit just got real. So they never offered me an explanation. I tried to get an explanation. I tried to find out the reasons why. I never ever found out the reasons why. But yeah, that was what it was. So life started marching on. That was my first ever job interview. I'd aced that. So with that mindset, I started applying for jobs. So I applied for the first couple. I thought, oh, yeah, I'm bound to hear back from some of these. Then the deadline would pass. Then I wouldn't hear anything, or I'd get a sorry, you're overqualified. I mean, what does that even mean? What you're either qualified for a position or you're not. So yeah, sorry mate, you're overqualified. Or invariably I wouldn't hear back from them. About 430 job applications later, with about 2 interviews. That was the sum total of all my work. And I wasn't just chucking out random generic CVs. I was tailoring a CV for every single job. It was, yeah, but nothing was happening. It just wasn't working. So with every deadline that passed, every refusal, every overqualified statement I was getting, it was knocking me down a peg, and I was sinking into depression. I was sinking lower and lower and lower into depression. And as the days and months grew like started merging into one, I liken it now to this last 3 or 4 months that we've been in this current situation. Yeah. With no clear end and what have you in sight. The anxiety that was fogging my brain at that time, I wasn't able to rationalize thought. So my sleep was suffering, my relationships were suffering, everything was going against me, and I started feeling like I was a burden to absolutely everybody and everything. I wasn't giving anything to anybody. I was just taking. So yeah, then round about October, November time, I think it was about Remembrance Day time, I made a plan. And I remember making that plan, and then life suddenly started becoming rosy again, because I'd taken that anxiety out, because now I had a date to aim for. Yeah. Which is, this is a key point. If you know somebody that's been struggling with depression or with any kind of mental health stuff, and they've been displaying signs for a long time, then all of a sudden their life and soul of the party again. Yeah. That is such a warning sign. It probably doesn't mean they're better, because it doesn't happen like that in an instant. It probably means that something they may have started firming up a plan. So yeah, at the end of that year, then I decided that was it. I'd go out and end my life. Clearly, I didn't complete the act. No, so I don't say successful there, because people say that. Oh yeah, he successfully ended his own life. Now, there's no success in any way, shape, or form. No success in ending a life at all. There's nothing grandiose. There's nothing fantastic about it. And contrary to popular belief, it doesn't stop any pain. It might stop the pain that person is suffering when they end their life, but it doesn't stop it entirely. What it does, it takes that pain out of that person's head, and it goes to all the people that person ever comes into contact with and matters to, and it just amplifies. Yeah. And it amplifies massively. And yeah, so anniversaries, Christmases, all those kind of things, that pain is always going to be there. It won't be got rid of. So that I came back from that. Now, at that time, I was on all kinds of medication. I was on mood stabilizers, I was on antipsychotics, I was on antidepressants, I was on sleeping tablets, I was on, you name it, I was on it. I was literally rattling my wall. All those things that I was taking were supposed to stop me from doing what I did. So I made a conscious decision And I made a conscious decision to get bigger, better, faster, stronger, harder. You name it. I would do this myself. And I stopped everything. All turkey. That is totally against all advice from medical practitioners. Do not do that. So I struggled for a little while, but then everything started looking rosy again. I got into work. I started getting employment, and I really threw myself into work. I'd always heard the old adage that if you want something done quickly, ask a busy person, because they'll make time to do it. And I was that busy person, like, in the office and stuff. I'd be the first person in the office. I'd be in at 6 o'clock opening up. I'd be the last person to leave, locking up at 6 o'clock. I wouldn't have had lunch. I wouldn't have had a break time. I'd probably have smoked about 40 cigarettes in record time, just like, I haven't got time to even smoke this, and wouldn't enjoy it. I'd just get outside there, get the nicotine hit, and then get back inside. So I wasn't really completing anything. The quality was bad, all the rest of it. And I kept going like that for a few years. Then in 2017, it happened again. The inevitable happened. I had a massive breakdown again. Spiraled into a really deep depression. The anxiety was there. I just felt like I was no use to anybody again. And that led to me being signed off work for a period of time. I remember going to see the occupational health psychiatrist, and she said, look, I'm signing you off work for 6 weeks. And I remember breaking down even more in her office, and I said, what am I meant to do? What am I meant to do with myself for 6 weeks? Well, if I can't go to work. She said, well, try getting better. and I was like, oh yeah, it's as simple as that. She said, listen, she said, if you don't accept that there's something wrong and that you need to take action to fix it, she said, all you're going to do with this 6 weeks off is press the pause button on the movie of your life, go back in 6 weeks' time, maybe rewind the movie a little bit. She said, that explosion that's going to happen at the end of that movie, that big climatic scene, is still going to happen. Yeah. You might just delay it. And that really resonated with me. Not straight away, but it kept repeating in my head. So I started listening. I accepted that there was something wrong, and I accepted that I needed to do something about it. So I went to the counsellors, and I've been to counsellors before. I went to see the medical professionals, but this time I listened. When they gave me homework, I did it.
Yeah.
And I started noticing an improvement in myself. Now, there was a big test happened to me in the mid-period of this time that I had off work. So on the 12th of July, so yeah, some 2 days time is going to be the 3rd anniversary. I was sitting in my front room at home, and my phone started buzzing. And I looked at my phone, picked my phone up, I looked at it, and there was a name on there, and I thought, I haven't spoken to him for a while. And when you're in the military, same as in rugby clubs, you make good friends and you make lifelong friends. You don't necessarily see each other all the time, but when you meet each other again, you pick up where you left off, and it's like you've never been apart. I'm sure you can relate to that. So I hadn't spoken to this guy actually on a phone call for quite some time. I knew straight away, because of the circle of friends when we all served together. I knew something was wrong with that circle of friends. And I classed all of them as some of my oldest and dearest friends. I couldn't face answering that call because I knew something was wrong. So a couple of minutes later, phone rang again. It's the same guy. I still can't bring myself to do it. And then I was like, I've got to answer this call. So I got myself in the living room again. I sat down, made myself comfortable, got myself ready for when the phone rang again. Had it all open on the coffee table. And as soon as it started ringing, it was his name. I just hit the speakerphone. First words he said to me, "Are you sitting down?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sitting down." And then he said, "Yeah, it's Sparky. He was killed in a firearms incident in Germany last night." And with that statement, I couldn't I couldn't speak, I couldn't reply, I couldn't do anything. I was like, thanks for letting me know, mate, and put the phone down. And it just rocked my world. It just rocked my world. Now, what happened after that? So my mate, he had 4 days left to do in the army. So 4 days left to go in the army. Beautiful wife, beautiful young son, a settled life in Germany, and he decided to end his life. And I was just like devastated by it. So what happened after that? Our circle of friends, then we all amalgamated together. We had the conversations, we had the phone calls, we were talking again, and we were trying to reason it why. Now, the army had released it as a firearms incident.
Yeah.
So we were like, yeah, so it must be an accident. There's no way he would have done something like that, because he was the life and soul of every single party. One of my friends, when we were talking about it, he said, well, he wasn't the last man you would think of to do something like that. He was the bloke in front of the last man, pushing the last man forward. That's how much of a legend this man was. So the days and weeks passed, and we accepted then that he'd ended his life. I gave up trying to reason why. I gave up trying to reason why, because I'll never know. I'll never find out. Only he knows the reasons why he did what he did. But I know one thing. I know I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe there is an afterlife. I believe when we do meet again, he's gonna be waiting for us when we all turn up and when we meet. And the first words out of his mouth is going to be, "I'm sorry, I messed up."
Yeah.
And then we're going to hug. Getting a bit emotional now.
Yeah.
But
do you want to take a break? Or you're all right?
No, I'm good, mate. I'm good to go through. So yeah, that was that kind of period then, and we all made a pilgrimage. There's about three, maybe 400 people made a pilgrimage over to Germany to go and pay our last respects at his funeral. So there was people that had literally come from all over the world to go and attend his funeral. Full military honours, and yeah, what a beautiful ceremony and everything it was. Now, because he was getting buried in this on the German network, so German graveyard, but it was a military funeral. It was being done in two halves. So we had a British military padre, and we had a German padre. So it was being interpreted. And there was a point in the ceremony when we were at the graveside when the padres were using a microphone. I say they were using it. The British military one wasn't using one. He was happy with projecting his voice, etc. The German guy was using the microphone as a PA system hooked up all around the entire cemetery there. And I'll never forget this day for as long as I live, or this moment for as long as I live, because I felt an emotion that has no place, absolutely no place at a funeral whatsoever. It was as they dressed away, the bearer party moved away from my mate's coffin, and they undressed, took the flag off from the medals and the hat and all the uniform bits and pieces ready to present to his widow. So the padres weren't saying anything at this time, and the German padre had taken his microphone and he put it down on the chair next to where my mate's son was sitting. And yeah, I was standing. I had the PA system over my shoulder, so I had a big speaker behind my shoulder. I don't know why I chose to stand there, but I was looking directly at my mate's son, and the pain and the torment and the anguish and the total loss that was etched in his face was just like burnt into my vision. But the thing that really got me, that was coming over the PA system, and I don't know if anybody else could hear it because it was a barely discernible muttering that this microphone was picking up, and the noise that was coming out of that kid's face will stay with me for the rest of my life. And all he was doing, all I could hear was "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." I get emotional when I recall these moments because of the emotion that it stirred up within me at that time. And I apologise for what I'm about to say if it offends anybody. I mean no offence by it. But I don't possess a vocabulary I don't possess the vocabulary to give this statement the gravitas that it deserves, but I fucking hated that man. I apologise for swearing, but I can't give that phrase the impact that it needs without putting it any other way. I hated it. I couldn't understand how he would do that to that kid. I couldn't understand how he could do that to his wife. I couldn't understand how he could do that to all of us. I really just could not understand it. It was horrible. It had no place at this funeral. It really knocked me when I felt it. So I got over that. I went and had what I like to call the condom moment. Went and stood off to one side, consoled myself in my thoughts for a minute, had a bit of a cry, a bit of a private cry. I mean, one of the things that struck me around the funeral was the amount of men that weren't crying.
Yeah.
The amount of men were clearly upset by it, but they've got to keep that stiff upper lip and they can't show any emotion to anybody. It's a funeral, for fuck's sake. You're meant to cry, and that's one of the problems. Now at the wake, afterwards, German beer garden, so quite strong German beer on tap. Beautiful July day. Lots and lots of people that haven't seen each other for a long time, and quite a few beers being drunk. So we went back for the wake, and there was something else that happened there, which kind of this is where the kind of man gang thing was kind of born from, if I'm totally honest. So again, I took myself off for a condom moment, went off for a cigarette at the side, and I was just watching what was going on. And as happens at funerals, you get these little cliques of people, 6, 7, 8 people maybe, standing around in a circle, chinking glasses, having the conversations. You hear the laughter. Do you remember when? What about when we did that? And all the tales that I'm sure you can appreciate. Quite aligned to a rugby club, because rugby players and rugby club kind of post-match drinks and stuff. There's quite a lot of similarities there. So while I'm watching having this condom moment, I was overwhelmed with confusion. I couldn't understand how out of all those people that were there, and like I said, there's like nearly 400 people standing around in this beer garden there. 400 people that thought enough of this bloke that we would stop what we were doing and make this pilgrimage to Germany to go and pay our last respects, because we all loved him as a brother, as a family member, as a colleague, as a friend, as whatever interaction we had with him. We all loved and respected him enough to make that journey. And this confusion just arose, and it was just like I could not understand how he couldn't reach out to a single one of us and say, "Mate, I'm struggling."
Yeah.
I mean, I carry a lot of guilt around with me because he knew my story. I told him what I'd done when I came out of the army, and he knew my story. And equally, as well as he could have reached out to me, because what I would have answered, if he'd have phoned me up and said, look, mate, I'm struggling, I wouldn't have told him to man up. I wouldn't have told him to pull himself together. I wouldn't have told him to get over himself or anything like that. I would have jumped into whatever hole he was in and then helped him, shown him the way back out, because I'd discovered the way back out myself. And the guilt I carry with myself now is that I didn't reach out to him as he was going through this major transition period in his life. Would it have stopped him doing it? I don't know, and that's something that I don't reason about anymore. So fast forward a couple of years, probably about 6 months. I'm back in work now, and I teach health and safety. I've just seen everybody's eyes roll at that statement. I teach health and safety, and I teach health and safety to builders. So again, a very male-dominated, macho kind of arena. While I'd been away on my period of absence there, the accrediting bodies for some of the courses they had put in, it shoehorned in mental health into some of the training courses. So for whatever reason, on one of the days on this, it was a 5-day course. I was teaching site managers, so again, experienced, quite tough men in their own right. I was teaching them, and it was day 4. I had a bit of spare time before lunch break on this Thursday it was, and I was like, right, I'm going to do the mental health bit. Walked over to the computer, turned the projector off, got a stool, sat in front of the room, and I basically told them my entire story.
Yeah.
Don't know why. I haven't got a clue what possessed me that day, that it was going to be that day that I started talking about it. But what I do remember thinking was, while I was doing it, was, what are you doing? What are you doing? Any respect that they've got for you is gone. They're going to lose faith in you. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to believe you. They're going to ridicule you. Everything like that was running through my mind, but I'd thrown myself into it. There was no going back. I was past the point of no return. And I got through it. I sat there. I cried openly in front of these guys that before 4 days beforehand, I'd never met before. They were all complete strangers, and I'm sitting there now crying. I'm like, yeah, this is it. You've done it now, Bish. This ain't going. You're never getting this back. But then I finished, and it was lunchtime, and I got up and stood up, went to the door, opened the door. I was like, right, gents, we'll call that lunchtime, expecting them all to just start laughing and throwing things at me, and just expecting all this ridicule. And it didn't happen.
Yeah.
The exact opposite happened. They were coming up to me, and one of the guys was saying, "Oh, you spoke about feeling like this. What did you do about that? Why is that then, mate? Well, because I've been feeling like that." And then another guy would come up and say, "Oh, can I have a word with you about my mate? Can we talk about this?" And to a man, every single one of them was shaking my hand. They were hugging me. It was just totally surreal, because what I didn't realise at the time, but what I'd done that day was I'd taken a big mirror up and I'd held it up to every single man in that room.
Yeah.
And I'd engaged with each man in the room, because I spoke about what we struggle about as blokes, and that is this fear of vulnerability. And I made myself, I'm not bigging myself up, but I made myself stronger by being vulnerable. I exposed my vulnerability to them, and that in turn strengthened all the respect and everything. So that's what I discovered then. And that's where I kind of started playing with the motto that it's not weak to speak.
Yeah.
But then, so a couple of weeks later, I was watching a football match. Please don't judge me. I do support football as well. It's moving out of Wales and living in England now. So drove down to Brighton, watched Southampton play Brighton. Me and my missus drove down there. We parked on the university campus, so we're wandering blindly around the stadium trying to find the ticket office and whatever. And I was conscious of this big fella. He's like a huge prop forward running at me, massive guy, and he's running towards me, and he's making a beeline for me. His eyes are locked on me, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? I'm steadying myself, ready for this great tackle to come in or get thumped or whatever. But as he gets closer, he's grinning. This grin on his face is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as he got to me, he threw his arms around me and hugged me. And then I recognised him. He'd been sat on that course when I started opening up. As he hugged me, he whispered in my ear. And my missus is there like, what's going on here? He whispered, "Thank you," in my ear. And I said, "Thank you? What for, mate? What for?" He said, "Well, by you talking that day," he said, "the very next day I spoke to my missus." He said, "I spoke to my missus and said, look, love, I think I'm depressed. I think I'm struggling with this. I think I'm struggling with that." So he got it out in the open, and he spoke to the people he loves and the people that matter to him. He went and sought medical help. He went to see the doctors. He spoke to his employer, and every one of them helped him. And the difference in 2 weeks, and the difference that he reported, just having opened up and not having to carry the burden of everything that he thought was troubling him, was gone. He was there. He was a new man. So that's where Mangang kind of developed from. So we started in October last year. I started it knee-jerk reaction. I was going to start it in January, but I did trying to do a little bit of research. I put a post on social media and said, "Does anybody know how to start a men's peer support group?" And I got loads and loads of negative stuff coming back off people. "Oh, you don't want to do that. You're not qualified. You can't do this. You can't do that. Don't bother."
Yeah, I find there's a lot of that out there at the moment, I think.
Yeah. So there was one message in that. Again, it was from a builder, and he replied to me, and he just wrote 3 words: "I need help." So my reply to him in the middle of September last year was "Get yourself to the coffee shop tomorrow. I'm starting it tomorrow. Be there." So then I asked my missus if I could use the coffee shop, and she's like, "I thought you was doing it in January." I was like, "No, we've got to do it. We've got to do it now. We've got to get it started now. I've got one bloke that needs help. Got to do it now." Went across there, sat in the coffee shop, waited. Nobody turned up. Nobody turned up, and I was like, "Yeah, is this it? Shall I just leave it at that?" Can't say I didn't try, but then I thought nobody knew about it. It was literally a few hours in the evening, so I got a bit more active on social media, spread the word a little bit more, and then the next week 12 men walked through the door.
Wow.
So 12 blokes, never met before. They walked in through that door and they started talking, and they've not looked back since. Since then, so that was before Christmas. We just had the one meeting going. Next week we're launching our 3rd physical face-to-face meeting here in Southampton and the surrounding area. Hopefully, if I can pull it off, it's my aim to put a man gang in every single town centre in Hampshire before the year's out. It's a big ask, but you've got to have targets, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
And I reckon I can do it. So throughout lockdown we've been meeting on Zoom. We meet every Wednesday night. In fact, when I finish this with you, I'll go and have a quick bite to eat, and then I'll be jumping into the man gang meeting.
Yeah, I'll put all the details up after this. At the end of the interview about everything that goes on, so people can jump in if they want to. If you're all right with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, we get guys coming in from all over the country, literally all over the country. We get quite a few guys coming in from Kent, London, Hull. A couple of Scottish guys come in, and dare I say it, we're international. We get a couple of guys from the States pop along every now and again. We've got quite a good following in Australia, and we've got a regular attendee that comes in from Mexico City, which and they all come in and they talk. Some of the guys come in and they just listen. Some of the guys come in and they will pour their hearts out. Yeah. But it's absolutely amazing to watch. So I'm minded of one of the guys that arrived just after Christmas. So we changed the way that we hold the meetings, because I was very conscious of the first meeting. I've since found out that guy did turn up, but he couldn't face walking in.
Yeah.
So what we do now is wherever we're meeting, we wait outside the physical meeting. So the guys are out there with their t-shirts on or drinking from man gang mugs. And if a bloke walks past, just ask them, "You here for man gang?" And if they say, "What's man gang?" we tell them, and they might come in anyway. And if they look a bit uneasy, you just say, "Do you want to come in? Do you want to talk about it? You're in the right place if you're looking for man gang," and in they come. Yeah. Because a lot of the times it's that anxiety of making that first step. So we make the first step together.
Brilliant.
And yeah, the power of talking is absolutely phenomenal. We don't fix anything. People say, "Andy, thank you for fixing me." I'm like, "No, mate. All I did was told you to be in a certain place at a certain time, and you've done the rest." Because it's the belief that's inside people, and by vocalizing what's troubling you, sometimes you can have the most trivial thing troubling you. It can be the most trivial thing, but because it's taking up all that processing power in the front of your brain, it doesn't allow anything else to get in there.
Yeah.
But once you vocalize it, once you get it out there, you've shared it with the world. It's true, the old adage: a problem shared is a problem halved. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, one of the guys in the room will come out with a small problem or a big problem or whatever. You'll get 2, 3, 4 guys in the room saying, "Oh, I remember when that happened to me. This is how I got through it." And they'll get 4 or 5 different ideas about what you might be able to do to hold him through. So yeah.
Yeah, I find when you open up to people, a lot more people come forward, and it's almost like they're afraid to speak out, but then they realise that they're not alone, and there is someone to talk to. There is someone, even though the circumstances may be completely different. There is someone who can empathise, with them and understand where they're coming from. So just having that openness, like you say, the great thing that you just said is you go out there and you'll start that interaction. Yeah, and I think that's a difficult thing for um, a lot of people to do, is actually open up and have that initial conversation. Whereas you're going out and and you're having it, you're starting that conversation. Oh, that's brilliant. It's a great way of getting it done.
I mean, in the rugby club, injuries part and parcel of being part of a rugby club. So you might, I don't know, you star prop forward. I keep saying prop forward because I was a prop forward myself.
In the old days, yeah.
Back in the day. Unfortunately, I had to retire from playing rugby, which I tell you what, that didn't do my mental health any good.
I don't.
No, and it kind of coincided with my first kind of bout of depression. I'd stopped playing rugby because of a shoulder injury. So I had a couple of surgeries on my shoulder. I had to put my career then before playing rugby. So I basically hung my boots up. I remember somebody, it was a community psychiatric nurse. She said, "You're missing a big part of your life." And bear in mind, I'm Welsh. I was born with a rugby ball in my hand. I never played football until I joined the army.
Yeah.
I mean, rugby was our game. We used to play rugby on the tennis courts in school. That was it. So it was a big part of my life that all of a sudden been taken away from me. I could have got into coaching. I could have done all the rest of it, but for me, it was like playing or nothing, and that can be a big thing when something like that happens. But what I was going to say, like, so the prop forward walks into the rugby club. Maybe he's hurt his neck, maybe he's hurt his knee. Everybody could spot it. Everybody can spot it, and they give sympathy, don't they? But you don't get that with mental ill health, because you can't see it. The signs aren't always there. I was a master of disguising what was going on inside. I could hide it from absolutely everybody. Nobody could know my innermost secret, so I became a master of disguise. I think I should have won Oscars because I was that good. But yeah, the reason for that is this stigma. Yeah. This stigma that surrounds mental health. Tyson Fury, what's your thoughts on him?
I don't know much about him, to be honest with you, but I know that since he's opened up, it's become a much easier conversation to have when people are less afraid to talk about it now. I think that comes out every single time someone who has an area of influence wants to come out and speak out about mental health. It helps. He's not an expert, but he's an expert on himself, and he knows what he knows how he's recovered and all those sorts of things. And I think to be able to have someone who is, I suppose, seen as probably the blokiest bloke on the planet, heavyweight champion of the world, turning around and saying, "I get depression and anxiety," it's a powerful thing. I think. Yeah. And I think the more people that can stand out and talk about it, like we do, and we're small voices in a big crowd. When somebody big like that turns around, people tend to listen. I think it's great.
But we can do it in our circles, in our communities. We can stick our head above the parapet, if you like. We can hold that mirror of vulnerability up and say, "I'm prepared. I'm prepared. What you see is not what makes me up." To all intents and purposes, I appear, as I said, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm still quite stocky. I'm a little tiny bit overweight, and I've got no hair. I'm covered in tattoos. You probably couldn't draw somebody more tougher. In fact, if you got somebody to do a drawing and say, "Draw me a tough man," it would probably be somebody with no hair, maybe with a beard, maybe covered in tattoos, almost always male, and it's quite a good experiment to do. So when I almost come out of left field when I say, "Yeah, I suffer from depression," or I try to end my life, and people are like, "Whoa, what? Somebody like you?"
Yeah, it's a very, your story is so similar to my experiences. You, not obviously what led up to what's going on, but what led up to your breakdowns and depression and anxiety. My very, very different stories and different stories, but the reactions you get afterwards and the way it's sort of dealt with initially and how it's changed now are, are massive. It's such a familiar story. Um, it's almost scary in the fact that it's taken this long, for us to get to a point where it's, well, and even now it's still a little bit taboo. There is still a stigma attached to it to talk about it. I think it's quite a scary thing, that we are not as open, like you say, with mental health as physical health. If I've hurt my knee, I will walk in, like you say, I walk into the rugby club. I can't play this season because I tore my ACL last year. And people go, "How's your knee? You're right." Blah blah blah. Common conversation. Yet everybody knows that I suffer from depression, anxiety, and this isn't a slight at anybody at the club or anything like that. But nobody asked that question because it's not the done thing, I suppose. Whereas my knee will take care of itself at some point. My brain will take care of itself at some point. But both of them are equally important to me. So I think
Definitely.
it's an interesting set of scenarios. It's something people still, as much as the likes of, you mentioned Tyson Fury are talking about it, there's still a stigma attached to it, that especially in big groups of men, when they're in that sort of environment of who's the manliest man, rugby clubs, and I guess it's very similar in the army and all those sorts of things. It is seen as a sign of weakness, but it shouldn't be. No
It's
way.
not. It's definitely not, and that's the motto of the Man Gang. That is the motto. We tell each other it is not weak to speak.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, speak to us on Zoom. We offer, when we have our meetings, whether you turn up face to face, whether you turn up on a Zoom call or whatever, you pick up the phone and speak to one of us. Then confidentiality is there. Whatever gets said in that room will not get repeated outside that room, unless it's with somebody that was there. So the complete confidentiality. We're certainly not going to go running back into your rugby club and say, "Oh, you fly off there. He's a bit loopy." That's another thing. That's another thing. Is often a consideration and often a stigma around. You get labelled with having poor mental health. You're mad. Well, don't go anywhere near him. He's lost it. He's a bit mad. We're not mad. We just need a little bit of assistance every now and again. We might need to take a tablet to restore a chemical imbalance. Definitely not mad.
Yeah.
Definitely probably some of the loveliest people you've ever met. And certainly have been in my experience anyway.
One of the things we're trying to instill with the guys at the club is, we take them training twice a week, play a game. So we encourage them to be physically fit, but we also need to encourage them to be mentally fit. And that, like you say, that could just be opening up in a group once a week just to unload the problems, so that come a Saturday morning when you go out onto the pitch, your mind is focused on the rugby. It's not worrying about the problems you've left at home and the kids and what's happening here and what's happening here, because you won't be able to perform at your top level. We're not a top level club, but you won't be able to perform as best as you can if you've got all of that baggage weighing you down, because you just want to be able to focus on what you're doing there and then and not worry about it. So, we're trying to instill with them that having that ability, and you don't have to talk if you don't want to, like you say, you can sit and listen, but just knowing someone will listen. And we're trying to say, if you want to come forward, we will talk to you, we will listen to you, and you can unburden that, so that when you go out on a Saturday, you're going out to enjoy yourself, that hour and a half, 2 hours of just fun. Go out, have that fun, don't worry about it. And you've unburdened yourself so that you can play, and you will be able to play better. And the more physical exercise you get, the better it benefits your mental health, and your mental health benefits your physical health. So you get out of the downward spiral and you start going up.
Yeah.
And
that's the way
through to them.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's just reminding me of Jim Telford's Man in the Mirror speech.
What's that?
Jim Telford, 2007 Lions tour to South Africa.
Oh, okay.
And he sat there with the forwards, and gave them. It's a famous motivational speech now.
Oh, I think I know the one you're talking about now. Yeah.
The honest player gets up in the morning, he looks in the mirror, and if he thinks he needs to get bigger, if he thinks he needs to get better, if he thinks he needs to get faster, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's all about being honest, and the honesty has to start with yourself.
Yeah.
In any situation, whether that's on the rugby pitch or in life in general, you've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to say, I need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So we've got three-stage mantra that we live by with the Man Gang. Ask if you're living with it, listen if you're not, but please act if you know, because it's not weak to speak. So yeah, ask if you're living with it, listen if you're not, act if you know. And if everybody picks that up and hoists that in, then yeah, we'll all start getting somewhere with breaking down this stigma around men's mental health.
Brilliant. Well, I think that covers you. Thank you very much for opening up and talking to us about your story. Thank you for talking to us about Man Gang. Like I say, I'll put all the details up about it, your Facebook page and all that sort of stuff. Thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm honoured and humbled that you shared your story with me. I might go away and have a quiet minute to myself, actually, because that was quite, I feel quite overwhelmed by it all. Brilliant. Thank you for that.